Alright, so I'm pretty sure y'all all heard, but if you haven't heard about Ashley Grayson and her husband Joshua Grayson, Lord, fucking T. Alright, so I seen this like a couple months ago. Like I used to always like watch the videos if it was on my For You page, but today, I guess, is the day that when I tell you God makes everything happen in mysterious ways. Okay, so let me break down a little tea for the ones that don't know. So supposedly Miss Ashley has a online business where she supposedly coaches people into making money like she did. Because she supposedly says she made $1,000,000 in 40 minutes. But we're going to get into how she even got that $1,000,000. And Mr. Joshua here was damn near panhandling behind a YT guy. And supposedly she paid his way into living the way that she lives. So, okay. So, after TikTok, because you know, TikTok, the FBI and everything. I don't know why people be getting on TikTok and they're not forgetting.
So let's talk a bit about the Ashley Grayson federal prosecution. Now, Ashley Grayson is charged with conspiracy, right? Conspiracy is basically a fancy word that means agreement, right? Agreeing with somebody else to commit a crime. That's what the allegation is. Of course, there has been no conviction, right? There has only been an indictment, and indictment is not evidence of guilt. There is no indication, at least in the public record or anywhere else available to folks, that she committed this crime. So we are very early in the process. At this point, what happens is what's called the discovery process, right? The document exchange process, a process by which the prosecutor will have to turn over evidence to the defense lawyers here. Now, obviously, conspiracy isn't murder. It's very different, right? Conspiracy to commit murder can only be charged as murder if the murder is completed, right? Then the charge is a lot more serious, obviously, and the possible punishments, the possible sentences are a lot more serious. That is not the allegation here. Now, the strength of the case will depend entirely on the evidence, right? What I mean by that is, what does the government have? Recordings, witnesses. What witnesses will come forward? What will the witnesses say, right? Effectively, what defenses can Ashley Grayson and her lawyers come up with here? That's what's going to matter, right? And that will ultimately determine whether or not we go to trial in this case, or whether or not this case is resolved by way of a plea. Now, in federal court, the conviction rate is very high, and a plea is a conviction, right? So, more often than not, these cases do not go to trial because federal authorities are very good and comprehensive in investigating these cases. And so that's why, generally speaking, in federal court, the conviction rates are so high. Now, an indictment, right, because she was indicted, means very little in the law, right? An indictment is basically a grand jury process, a process by which grand jurors get into a room and vote whether or not there's enough evidence to go to trial, because in very serious cases, the system provides that extra layer of protection for folks. So that's what happened here. An indictment is not evidence of guilt. It doesn't mean that she committed a crime. Obviously, it's not good to be charged with a serious crime, but it's important to keep in mind that she holds on to the presumption of innocence this early in the case. Now, obviously, in terms of punishment, in terms of sentencing, that will depend on what happens down the line in this case. That will depend on whether or not she, again, has evidence against her that is difficult to overcome. If there is a plea taken, that will possibly help with a downward departure in a sentence down the line, should that happen, right? Now, there are some folks that are talking about whether or not the co-defendants here have different lawyers. That means virtually nothing, right? Whenever you have a case, we have two co-defendants, those co-defendants should get different lawyers, right? Because even if the defenses aren't inconsistent or don't seem inconsistent at the outset, they may become inconsistent down the line, and any lawyer that is in that position can not only get in trouble, but compromise the case. And so all parties involved want to make sure that there is no conflict of interest here. Now, in federal court, typically, unlike in many state courts, the bail conditions are very strong, right? What I mean by that is, not only is a certain sum of money required to have a person released, But the bail conditions have geographic restrictions. Typically in federal court, you must check in with probation. You're not permitted to travel outside of the region in which your case is being dealt with, other than with a judge's approval. So this early on, it's very difficult to tell what will happen in the coming months. But what's important to keep in mind is that the charges, while serious, will depend entirely on the evidence. And so that is where we are.
A federal indictment that surfaced against influencers and, of course, the power couple of Ashley Grayson and the husband Joshua Grayson has actually set off on social media a frenzy after the two were reportedly charged in an alleged attempt where they tried to put off or to put out someone. Of course, the two have been charged by the United States District Court for the Western District of Tennessee. And of course, in this video, we've partnered with a prominent New York lawyer, that is Mr. Dmitriy Shakhnevici, who is actually explaining this whole case in detail. But of course, before we dive deep into this story, I want you to click the subscription button of the YouTube channel of Mr. Dmitriy, which we are going to leave in the comment section of this video, plus in the description. We are going to leave a link in there so that you can subscribe and actually watch his videos.